A very good morning to you this Thursday morning. It is such a great joy and a pleasure to be with you and for you to interact with us on Elevate TV. I'm your host this morning, Agnes Maina, on the Morning Digest. Why don't you take a minute to share this link with your friends, your people out there, your colleagues, because today we are having a very interesting topic on Elevate TV. We are on Elevate Kenya, on YouTube, and Elevate TV on Facebook. And it is a joy to just come with this topic on the care of creation. This is going to be quite technical, quite challenging, but let's plug into this conversation with none other than June Nderitu. Karibu sana. Such a pleasure to be with you. Why don't you introduce yourself to the viewers?
Thank you. Thank you, Agnes. My name is June Nderitu. I'm born again. I love Jesus as my Lord and Savior. I'm a daughter, a mother, well, a mother spiritually.
Okay.
I'm a sister. And yeah, I love serving. I sing.
Wow. All right.
And I think for the purposes of this conversation, I'm an environmental enthusiast.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, what is an environmental enthusiast?
Well, that's something I coined for myself. It's not anything. It's just basically to say someone who is concerned about care of creation.
Okay.
Because this is God's earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I like that. This is God's earth.
This is God's earth.
So one of our responsibilities is to take care of this earth.
Actually, I would say it's our first responsibility, because if you think about creation in Genesis 1, that's the first thing that God did. He created the heavens and the earth.
Yes.
And everything in them, and there was an order.
Yes.
And then the last day he created, the second last day he created man.
Okay.
And he created the environment before he created man.
That
means that the environment was created for man. So by the time man was coming on the scene to be given the work of taking care of creation, God had already put all those things in place. The ecosystems, the beauty of the trees, the flowers, the animals. So it is God's earth, and it belongs to him first, but it was bestowed to us as a gift.
Wow.
Yes.
And which we need to take care of.
Otherwise, we will all be wiped out. Yes, we need to take care
of that. You say that
with
with such a finality.
It's a fact. Yeah.
Okay, great. So when we talk about care of creation, we are actually talking about being environmental conscious.
Yes.
Just break down this care of creation. How can we start, or, if we've never been, how can we start to be environmental conscious? If we have been, how can we take it to another level? Well,
I'd simply say that if you look at life, the way life is, the reason why you wake up every morning, go to work, take care of your children or whoever it is that is in your care, is so that they can live another day.
Yes.
It's to sustain ourselves and our lives. So, I mean, everything that is happening around us is happening so that we can sustain life.
Yes.
And one of the basics of sustaining life is food. Yeah, food cannot be created from the air. You cannot conjure up food. You have to grow it.
Unless you're Chinese making it from plastic.
Let's not go there, because I cannot substantiate. But the point is, you cannot produce it from the air. It has to come from the soil. It has to come from the air. It has to come from the water. The interaction of those elements, is, of course, it's part of the larger ecosystem. Is what we need to that's what we should actually realize, that the food that you're eating on that plate is it's possible because the soil is healthy, because the air is not polluted, the water can actually grow it. And we've had those discussions about food grown with polluted water.
Yes.
So that's where the consciousness should start. When you're that fork full of whatever you're eating, it's because the environment allows it, right?
Yes.
But I say further that when you walk around and you smell the fresh air, as opposed to, polluted air, that's some of the things that you should spur your consciousness towards what actually happens around us. When you go to the village and you say, I want to stay here because the air is so fresh.
Air is fresh.
Those are the things that should create a conscious, living and help us to know that there's something that's different about the city and probably, and the village. And it's because the pollution is less. People maybe are not doing a lot to mess up the environment there as compared to here. But secondly, I'd say that how do we form ourselves as Christians? What is a Christian formation that we go through, or otherwise known as discipleship?
Yes.
If, for example, and I know I'm going to step on toes here, if your pastor has never talked about environmental concerns in the course of their preaching or their discipling you, then that is not a full gospel. So I'd say that for me, and for maybe those people who I interact with closely, for us it is a gospel mandate. We say that environmental concerns and care of creation is a gospel mandate first and foremost, and that's the reason why we are enthusiasts, because we know it's part of mission. It's part of what we are created to do. Otherwise, we would not sustain life.
Yeah. Okay.
So what I'm saying in a roundabout way is that we should be conscious from the minute children can talk.
Yes.
Talk about the environment.
That's good.
Demonstrate, care of creation. And care of creation here is just a way of saying, let us be conscious of God's green earth and take care of it, because it's on loan.
Okay.
There are people who are coming after us.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that brings us, then we are talking about conservation of the environment. If we are going to be conscious, we have to conserve this environment. And I remember in the earlier years when we were growing up under the late President Moi, I would see him building gabions, and there was a lot about the 4K club. Yeah. I don't quite remember if it was Kungana, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I the 4K club, and there was a lot about planting trees and stuff like that. How do we take it on now? What is actually conservation? Well,
conservation is a very wide topic, because there's conservation of wildlife, conservation of forests, conservation of it's wide.
Yes.
But if I was to be very specific, yes, it's true. During the reign of the late President Moi, there was a lot of kuzuia momonyoko wa udongo, which was basically to prevent, it was conserving the soil.
Erosion, yes.
Yeah, it was very specific to soil erosion. But unfortunately, it was also accompanied by a lot of, destruction of forests.
Okay.
A lot of what happened in that time also, it was like giving with one hand and taking with the other. Yes, there was conservation of the soil and building of gabions. That's the thing that he did a lot publicly. And a bit of tree planting. I remember what was actually very good about that time was we used to have the annual tree planting seasons. And it was actually official. The schools would do it. The students would be involved, the pupils would be involved, but that kind of declined with time.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's being revived. I hope it is, but I think it
There's
should.
Still some colleges that still do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know every year also that the Ministry of Environment, puts out the information on the international, the national tree planting seasons and all that. And I think what needs to happen then is to do more engagement of the communities. Okay. And the problem with the city, there's a lot of things that happen out there that we may not know about. So there's need for more engagement, especially of children in schools. Yes. People in churches also partner with churches. The governments need to partner more with church. The government needs to partner more with churches to bring them on board. Can you imagine if every Christian in every congregation in this city and in Kenya committed to planting their 10 trees, just 10 every year? We would increase the tree cover in this country exponentially. And we have a target by 2022, 2 billion trees.
Oh, okay. Where are we at currently?
I'm not sure where we are. Well, I'm working towards that personally, but I don't know where we are. But the government is really working hard. But the question is, are they actually sharing that information with people to bring them on board, so that it's not becoming just a few people here and there doing it, but it's actually a national concerted effort to increase, for example, tree cover, because tree cover is very important, as we shall discuss later, in combating even some of these things that we're struggling with. So
what at your own personal level, what can you do? Where can we get this stuff like the seedlings? I don't know what to start with, how to. And if you look at the cities, we have really gone into a concrete jungle. So what, let's talk about Nairobi, for example. Where can I do this tree planting? If I want to get involved.
Yeah. Okay, that's a tough one. But I'll talk about what you can do at a personal level in terms of, for example, increasing tree cover. And I'll make reference to our great-grandparents and our grandparents. If you notice, if you go to your village, there was always a wood lot. There was always a section with trees where your grandmother used to you know, should probably trim the lower branches and keep trimming. That's what she used as firewood. She should never cut the trees down. But that ensured that there was firewood throughout. I'm not saying use firewood. I'm saying that they had a wood lot. They had a wood lot. And they had that consciousness of these trees actually matter. Where would you get seedlings? The seedlings are available if you actually want them. It's just that maybe sometimes you don't know where to look. Of course, the premier place I would say call on is Kenya Forest Service. And their offices all over. I think every county, you can't miss, information on where the Kenya Forest Service is. But there are also very many individuals who do that as a business. Who, they propagate seedlings. They sell them, and during the time, the tree planting seasons, in the long rains and the short rains, they actually make quite some good money. A lot of them are youth groups.
Interesting.
And what they do is some of them collect seeds. You're given permission to collect seeds from the ground in the forest. And propagate. Others, they use seedlings. So it's, if you really want to do this, the information is available. Do some homework.
Do some homework.
And you will find it. But I would say that to get, for example, if you are in maybe Kajiado, Ruai, Rungai, the local office will tell you what are the best trees that are suited to that area, because we don't want to just plant any trees. Of course, there's commercial forestry, like when you're driving to Nakuru, you see this big, these tree farms. There's commercial forestry, which is good. It makes money. But it also messes up the ecosystem, because you're planting trees of one species that are not even indigenous to that area necessarily. So it's good to mix. The commercial forestry and indigenous, the forest. Like, for example, Ngong Forest, where we work with some friends of ours, we only plant indigenous trees. And we work with the local community because they help us to preserve the forest.
So what you're saying, basically, there are some trees that are specific to regions, and we need to go out and find out, what are the indigenous trees that are specific to a certain region, not just plant anything, so that we preserve the ecosystem.
Well, it's good to have a variety. And as I said, commercially, a lot of the indigenous trees will not help you. The ones for making poles. And that's why you will find that there are specific people who will plant specific trees for commercial forestry. But they have a system to make sure that they don't deforest entirely. So in a way, they still create, they still help. They're still a carbon sink. I mean, they're still good for absorbing carbon. But in the long run, and remember, this is God's earth. He did not only create monkeys or elephants. He created a variety of insects and birds, and they benefit from this variety. So usually when you say create forests using indigenous trees, it's because that is, especially those that are indigenous to that area, you're basically maintaining the ecosystem. And an ecosystem is basically how all these things interdepend on each other for food, for, even pollination. So there's a lot I can say about that. But generally, if you are serious about forestry, again, I said, unless it's commercial, which I am not an authority on, it's good to find out what are the trees that are grown in that area. So that you can. And indigenous trees take long to mature, and that's the reason a lot of people shy from them.
All right. Quite interesting conversation right here. You are on Elevate TV Kenya and Elevate on Facebook and YouTube. June, tell us, what spurred you to come into this place where you're enthusiastic about, the care of creation? Because as I know you from the past, you were never in a wildlife club, you were not in a conservation club, because we had an opportunity to be in a school together. So what was your turning point? What brought you to this place?
God works in mysterious ways.
His wonders to perform.
His wonders to perform. I think I grew up in the village. Well, not the village as you think, the shags, but outside Nairobi, let me put it that way. So for me, I guess I've always been close to nature. In my own way. And I actually grew up facing the mountain.
That's Nyeri, around
Nyeri. So I saw the mountain every morning. And I think that intrigued me. And then, of course, there's a forest surrounding it, and we live near a forest as well. So for me, I was conscious about forests and ecosystems early. But for me to become part of, to say that care of creation is my responsibility, I think it came later in life in the course of my career. Because I worked for a church organization for many years. And part of our mandate was environmental stewardship.
nice.
Yeah, that's part of the work we did, you know, climate justice and all that. So for me, I think it became more, you know, the way you see things and you're like, yes, nice. But later on, you're like, this is actually part of why I was born.
Part of your assignment.
Part of your assignment.
You started to recognize your assignment right in the midst of working.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it became more than a job. Yeah.
The passion came in.
The passion and the purpose as well, I guess, was found. And that's where I'd say I started getting conscious about, you know, it's Christians must do this thing. Yeah, this is part of our mandate. As I said, it's a gospel mandate. Yes. So I'd say that's when I started getting into that.
Okay. Maybe you can tell us, you know, you've said that this is part of the Christian mandate. What are some of the scriptures that, you know, drive us towards, you know, caring for our creation?
Yeah. Thank you. That I was waiting for that question. I started with creation. When God created the earth, the heavens, and everything in it, and then he put man there, that already should tell us that we have a responsibility. God gave the responsibility of caring for what was created then, created order to man. I mean, that's enough.
Yes.
The fact that he said, you know, subdue and take care. And, I don't believe he was an engineer. I believe he was some kind of a farmer, some kind of a, I don't know. He probably used to look at the flowers, at the pollination, at all the bees and all that and think, wow. You know, that was the first job. The first job was to take care of creation, really. To produce, but in a way that is sustainable, isn't it?
Yeah, okay.
But when you look at other scriptures that talk about, you know, the heavens declare the glory, you know. If we cannot see the heavens because of pollution and smog, can they really declare the glory of God?
Ouch.
I mean, we miss, there are certain aspects that we miss out when we don't take care of creation. Another scripture that I really love, it's in Romans, talks about God has actually put all his attributes, his unseen attributes, in creation. So that you cannot give an excuse that you do not know God.
Give an excuse,
even if you have never heard of the name. When you look at the tree or the bird or the flower, you should ask yourself, who did all this? And that should start now to actually point you to God and the creator, God, the real God, you know, the one we serve and the one that we worship. And it's like God is saying, I've put the gospel there.
That's good.
So if we cut all the trees down and there's no diversity, where shall we see God? So apart from the way we proclaim the gospel, God has also put himself out there in creation.
Wow.
So that we can stop
really
and ask,
profound.
who did all this?
Yes.
And that is how God starts to connect with us. We can actually connect with God through nature. So there are many other scriptures that I can mention, but those are the ones that really bless my heart. Because I usually tell people, you guys, if you don't plant trees, people will not see God. You will not see his unseen attributes.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So there are many others that I can say, but those are the ones that I really found.
And I just think about, you know, when you sit in a place like Karura Forest, you know, and you hear the birds chirping and there's such nice tree cover, you know, especially where the prayer area is, you know, it's quite dense, intense, where you sit under those trees and you start to hear those birds chirping. It's actually, it's a calming effect.
Have you ever sat next to the ocean?
Have
you ever sat next to a river and it's not smelling?
Yes.
Or you listen to the wind in the trees. I don't even understand. Do we even need more? Those are some of the most, sometimes you can connect with God so, in such a deep way. Yes. In nature. Yes. Because he has put his invisible attributes there. You understand? So there are very many things that we miss out when we don't care for God's green earth. Yeah.
All right, that is a wonderful turning point, because I did think you would be so engrossed into environmental, you know, conservation and stuff like that. So you said something, because we're just about to come around to the break. You said you normally do some of this work with some of your friends. Tell us a bit more about what you do.
Well, we have a group of friends.
Okay.
One of us took the leadership.
Okay.
Where I go to church.
All right, great.
Yeah, so churches, take note. This can be done in church. And she brought a group of us together. Okay. And we started, you know, just going to Ngong Road Forest. Okay. That's next to Lenana School. That's the block next to Lenana School. Because it has 4 blocks. Okay. Ngong Forest has 4 blocks. And we engaged the forester. And he gave us a plot that was previously forest a long time ago. Then people had been settled there. Now they had been, there's a time when people are removed from the forest.
Yes.
And he said, yeah, plant here. But he thought it was a joke. And he came back and found trees growing. So he's given us more and more. And we are going to increasing.
So there are spaces. Even in the forest.
So many spaces that are supposed to actually be
under forest cover.
Yes, that have been degraded.
Okay.
But now where people can actually, if you're enthusiastic like me, you can actually come and join us. Usually we have a group. We share the information on how we do the work.
Okay.
And also how we approach each other, and because we self-funded.
Okay.
How we approach our friends to buy seedlings and come and work, and it's usually so much fun.
So it can actually be a fun activity.
And worship at the same time.
Oh, wow. So you sing, like you said earlier that you sing?
Of course, we sing, we share scriptures, we pray.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay, so it is a challenge for, youth groups in church that they can actually...
Even old women and old men, it's everybody's responsibility.
It's everybody's responsibility.
Yeah, as long as you eat. Do it. If you eat, then you should be planting and maintaining.
Now, I like how you brought yourselves together, just to do something that is worthwhile. And you need to tell us, why is it important that we have a carbon sink?
All right.
Yeah, when we come after the break. But let's just, delve a bit more into what you're doing, with your friends. And you're saying it can actually be as a hobby. But you're doing something that has a long-term effect by planting those trees and going out and just ensuring that there's tree cover. One of the things that you have actually brought out, and which I didn't know, is that there are actually spots in forests that you can actually be given.
Yeah, actually what happens, I think a lot of us focus a lot on maybe Karura forest because they publicize a lot.
Okay.
But there are other forests in this city.
Okay.
Where we can do.
The City Park?
I don't know about City Park. I have never engaged there, but I know in Ngong Forest they need help.
Okay.
To increase their spaces.
Cover, yeah.
And there are other little forests, like Kiambu Forest, I believe.
Arboretum?
I don't know about Arboretum, but I think the issue is if you want to know, again, you will find out. Yeah. And for us, we chose to start there.
At the
because Ngong Forest has more opportunity to do that kind of work. And many people plant trees there. So many.
What is the cost of a seedling?
It depends. It all depends.
What's the range? The
range is, for the indigenous, the lowest I think I found is 20 shillings.
Oh, okay. So it's not even that expensive.
No.
Okay.
So cost is not an issue.
Okay.
And I've seen them go as high sometimes as 150, 200.
Okay.
But usually you will find the people who will charge that kind of money it's not just the cost of the seedling, it's the cost of caring for it until it matures. Because we are not supposed to plant trees, my friends.
Okay.
We're supposed to grow. So when you put it in the ground, you care for it until
the end of it.
No. You care for that tree. That's what we do with our friends.
Okay.
We have the planting season, yes, but in between we care for those trees.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're actually healthy.
Yes.
Because they can be overgrown by brush and all that.
Yeah, and weeds and all that.
Yeah. So you need to take care of them up to a point where they can now they're okay. Yeah, it's about 3 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're taking on the break. If you have questions, please do post them in the chat, and we'll be looking at the questions right after this break.
Kids Entertainment.
I have the enemy in sight. 18 degrees by 4 degrees.
Inspiring moments.
In life's journey, there is that one defining moment.
I remember I touched them, they were still warm. And I just told them sorry.
Deep conversations on spiritual, political, and economic issues.
In 2017, you offered your candidacy for the President of the Republic of Kenya.
Top local gospel tunes. truthful, engaging conversations.
The person who won me over to Christ, before I came to know he was a pastor, we already clicked, we already developed a very strong rapport.
Powerful live church services.
God was in the business of restoring apostles to the body of Christ.
I'm not going preacher. I'm your friend.
I am alone. Been alone since I buried my first boy. It doesn't matter anymore.
I feel like I'm failing in what I was put on this earth to do. I want to make a difference, like you did.
You can never underestimate the power of grace.
Movement! Fully safe! We need an ambulance! It's grace.
The Grace Card.
We are back on this morning, on the Morning Digest this Thursday morning, and we are talking about an interesting subject, the care of creation, with none other than Nderitu. And if you just joined us, we are on Elevate TV on Facebook and Elevate Kenya on YouTube. It is such a great pleasure to have you. Please, if you have any questions on this topic, do post them on the chat and we will be able to tackle them. Our environmental enthusiast, as she calls herself, will be willing to share, you know, information. Actually, she has a master's in what? Environmental what? Studies?
Transformational development.
Environmental, sorry? Say that again.
Transformational development.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still doing it.
Okay, great. And she'll be able to take some of those questions as you bring them. Now, let's transition over to climate change. Which is quite an intense topic because we can see the natural disasters that are happening, you know. And when we look around on the global warming and climate change effects, what can we do to mitigate, to make this less? And you can give us some of the statistics about, you know, what is happening, the disasters that are happening.
Okay. I think it's good to say, because sometimes this talk of climate change is alarming.
Okay.
That climate change is something that it's a natural, climate has been changing since the beginning of, when creation happened, you know. It's the weather patterns over long periods of time.
Okay.
So we've had climate change. I guess what now we have is the kind of climate change that is actually becoming detrimental because it's creating situations where it's harder to live.
Okay.
You know, more disasters, people are more vulnerable, more destruction, more death, as maybe compared to what happened, you know, in other climate, you know, you know, centuries ago and all that. And you will find that if you actually, maybe if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, I'd challenge you, think about July weather then, maybe when you were born, or when you're growing up and now. And you will find that July is now actually warmer.
Oh, okay. And the way we are feeling cold.
Yeah, we are feeling cold because, you know, you adapt over time.
Yeah.
But if you actually think about it, it was slightly colder. At least I remember that.
Yeah.
Growing up in July, July was brutal. Now July is bearable.
Yeah.
What that tells us that over time, the patterns change. And there are many reasons that cause that. Of course, the increase in you know, we talk about global warming because of the greenhouse gas effect. It's a very technical subject. I don't think I want to get into it. But just know it's getting warmer.
The earth is getting warmer.
The hot seasons are hotter. That's why we have more drought.
Okay.
You know, droughts are more frequent. The rains are not as, you know,
predictable as they were before.
Exactly. The weather patterns are changing. They're becoming, and then you find that, for example, and if you want to see that practically, just drive along Uhuru Highway now. On a normal not now during July weather. And we find it's actually warmer. Why? Because the trees were cut to make way for the expressway. That goes to tell you what trees do. Trees, basically, any place that is wooded, the temperatures naturally
will drop.
They will.
Yeah.
Because trees are not just a carbon sink in that they absorb carbon dioxide and give us oxygen, which we live off. But actually, trees create a microclimate in that it cools the place down considerably. And that's why it's very important, you know, to plant trees, because they help us to adapt.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
to kind of cope with the climate change, because we cannot stop it. It's like a train that's going at high speed. The best we can do is to cope. Right now where we are is to, what can we do as humanity to be able to live with the climate change? So one of the ways is actually increasing tree cover, because it keeps the earth cooler. It absorbs carbon dioxide, which is a contributor, of course, you know, to this warming business.
Yes.
But also, it is to decrease the use of fossil fuels.
Okay.
But how many cars? Have you seen the traffic jams? That tells you the number of vehicles that are on the road, and they're all emitting this
yes.
And fossil fuels are like petrol, you know, diesel, kerosene. If we would decrease the use of that, that's also another way of adapting.
Okay.
Because it means that we have less emission. And that means that we'd have to go for cleaner energy.
Yeah.
You know, electricity, which is generated by hydropower, or gas, it's cleaner, or solar, which is actually one of the best, you know. It's expensive yet to install and to maintain, but in the long run, the benefits outweigh the costs because, you know, of what it does to the environment. Of course, now there are all kinds of adaptations and innovations that you know, for green energy. So that, and those are the ways in which we mitigate, we adapt.
Yeah.
Mitigating meaning, how can we actually stop some of these effects from, you know, affecting us at individual level. I mean, as I said, you plant your trees, grow them, switch to green energy, and that is also goes for industries and governments and institutions as much as possible. One of the ways I know that the people of faith are doing this is some of the churches, especially in the developed world, who had invested in fossil fuel industries, like, you know, the Shells and the, you know, and the Totals, they have divested.
Oh, okay.
Because they're saying, if God expects us to take care of this earth, then we have to stop investing in fossil fuels, because they're part of the problem. So you find that they're removing their money, their investments from there, and putting them maybe in green energy.
Okay.
So a lot of those old churches are now having solar panels. How many churches have solar? You know, use solar.
Yeah.
That's how one of the ways in which we proclaim the gospel. Yes. Is doing things that would actually protect the environment.
When we look at actually you've talked about the developed countries, how comes, you know, when we look at them, they're the ones with higher industries, but yet, you know, they were the ones with the higher emissions, but yet are the ones that when they have the disasters, they don't take long. Like, for example, ourselves, when Budalangi comes almost annually, you know, we have deaths and people losing their homes and their property. Yeah. What is the difference between them and us?
The difference between them and us, because we are all experiencing climate change. It's only that the effects hit us harder than them sometimes because they are less vulnerable. And you know, a disaster is when a hazard meets vulnerability. When a hazard
what a definition.
meets vulnerability, disaster
happens.
So, for example, we can be in a place where we have, you know, disaster plans in place. We know what happens in case there's a flood, in case there's a hurricane, in case there's a fire, for example, like a forest fire. Because, you know, forest fires happen when it's too dry. We know that this is the procedure that is going to be followed, and we can actually predict and put all measures in place to prevent it.
Yes.
That means we have reduced our vulnerability. And most of the time, for developing countries, unfortunately, the vulnerability we hang on to is poverty. We say we are poor. So when those hazards come, they are hit so hard that their livelihoods are destroyed.
Completely.
Some of them are disrupted permanently. Others take so long to bounce back. I was just, you know, thinking about El Nino. There are people who are still suffering from the effects of El Nino, which happened in 1997.
Wow.
How many years ago is that?
That's about 13. No, more than 23.
Can you imagine? They're still suffering from the effects of that time when it flooded.
Yeah.
So it's because when the more vulnerable people are, the more prone they are to disaster, you know, messing up their lives completely. And that's the difference between us and them. When you have disaster management plans in place, when people are disaster conscious, even when they're doing development, like now, we know what happens when people build on waterways.
Talk about that.
In this country, it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yes.
But, you know, instead of now educating people when they should not cultivate near the rivers, or put buildings near the rivers, we are actually, you know, facilitating that. That goes to show that our priority is upside down. Yeah? So for me, I'd say that whenever we put disaster management plans in place, you know, and be disaster conscious, even in your planning, know that keep away from the waterways, from the rivers. That means that you're preventing these disasters from becoming disruptive, even when they happen, even when the floods come, because they'll come. When the forest fires come, they will not affect human life. They will not disrupt livelihoods. So vulnerability, reducing vulnerability should be the biggest thing that we should be focusing on. And that's how sometimes mitigation and adaptation helps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And you were talking about the carbon, was it carbon coins that countries can...
Carbon credits?
Carbon credits. Just
wow. I don't have the full science behind it, but I know that sometimes, you know, the way I can pay you to clean up for me?
Yes.
That's how I understand it. So you can, the people who are in more developed countries where the industries are big can actually pay, and they do actually pay for carbon credits, where people here create, for example, carbon sinks. Maybe they increase the forest cover because it helps to suck up that carbon that's already in the air, which So it's one of the ways actually where you can make money.
Oh, okay. And I was just coming to ask you that question, yeah? What are some of the opportunities that arise, you know, between the youth? Because now, of course, COVID has hit us hard, and there are other areas that we can look into when it comes to environment and and taking care of the creation. Are there opportunities that we can plug into?
So many.
Okay, just break them down for
us. They are capital intensive, but they're there. For example, as I was saying, there are communities that I know that are earning from, you know, selling carbon credits, you know, to developed nations. And it's a more complex than I'm describing it, but it's something that is doable. And I know some of even in Kenya, there are some people who have benefited from that. But one of the very simple ways that, you know, people can make, you know, a livelihood around environmental concerns is start a seedling, a seedling nursery. You know, sell seedlings during the rainy seasons when people are planting trees in, you know, you hear people planted 200,000 seeds. Where do you think they come from? It's people who have created that
so
opportunity.
So if you multiply 200,000, if you're given times 20, just, you know.
That's good money, isn't it? In one season. Yeah. And then you can also, you know, the people who trade in green energy, the people who sell solar panels, for example. As I said, it's capital intensive. The people who, you know, who help others, help industries, help institutions to green, you know, to green their maybe their buildings or their homes, and it's lucrative. I mean, selling solar is they're expensive to install, but the more people, you know, invest in that, I think the more the cost probably will come down. But there are also people who, I know the communities around the forests, you know, they actually earn from taking care of trees in the forest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you know, it's a daily wage. It's usually a daily wage. Like, for example, even in our group, sometimes we hire casuals. It's a daily wage. It's not much. But for some people, the fact that they can work every day, you're creating an opportunity, isn't it, to care for these forests that are being created. Greening, as I said, greening is quite, it's a good, there are very many, I think there are more opportunities than we can think of. I have seen people who make briquettes, for example, from industrial waste. I know people who make briquettes, for example, from the byproducts of sugar production. And that is, you're giving people an opportunity to use something other than charcoal, which is a tree that was cut somewhere, isn't it? So, and that's something that young people can do, or anybody can do for that matter. So it's matter that is a waste product anyway. Of course, we want to move away from that altogether, but you cannot avoid altogether also the use of burning some of these things as, you know, as fuel and especially at the household level. So that's another way you can make money, briquettes. And then there are also the non-timber forest products.
Yeah.
You can be a beekeeper. For you to be a beekeeper, you can't keep you cannot keep a hive in a building like this, for example.
No, when you talk about beekeeping, now we are starting to see laws that are actually making you get surcharged for keeping.
It's true. Going forward, being a beekeeper might be more costly than you had thought.
So,
and these are some of the things that, that government,
downplay the importance of us taking care of our environment, because the bees are very important.
Without bees, we have no food. Absolutely zero food. Bees are the reason why we eat. They pollinate everything. You know? So if you actually eliminate bees, I think we can start to see the human race decline. And right now, even in some of the developed countries, they're actually working extra hard to bring back bee populations, because they are decimated by the use of pesticides.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
But as you're talking about beekeeping, it's true. I was quite appalled. In fact, I was so angry when I saw the new, the new laws that are being proposed about regulating the beekeeping and honey production industry. And I thought this is one of the ways you discourage people from actually investing in this. And this is one of the, bees don't need pesticides, they don't need fertilizer. Bees, it's you create the hive and let them come and
then have the flowers and the trees and stuff around.
Exactly. And I understand the importance of bees, because I grew up in a coffee farm.
Okay.
And I'm telling you that coffee, without the bees, there's no production of coffee in this country.
Okay.
So I can imagine how much more if people actually kept beehives. You can change people's lives. I went to about abundant life, and abundant life is, I think, it's holistic, it's spiritual, but it's also physical and economic. Exactly. So I felt that I felt let down by the government, honestly, and I think we need to talk about that a little bit more. But generally, that is one of the ways in which you can make money from environmental, being environmentally conscious, because of course you will want to have more trees, to have more flowers, to have all that, and of course herbalists, they also make money from the forests. They harvest trees, barks, roots sustainably. Don't kill the trees.
The word, yes.
Yeah, and that's one of the ways in which they make money.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So there are actually very many potential opportunities that come around with the environment.
So many.
And one of the interesting things that you mentioned earlier is that most of the CSRs in companies actually are around, being environmental conscious, and people can plug into that. Why don't you just delve into that a bit deeper?
Yes, of course people might ask, so how do we do it?
How do we fund it?
How do we fund it? Well, for starters, use your own money. A seedling is only 20. If a seedling is 50 shillings, you can afford 2 every season. I'm sure of that. Even the people with the lowest income can afford a seedling a year. I am so sure of that. But other than that, for example, congregations, how many churches actually put some of their money, and they receive a lot of money, put some of that money to environmental work? I said it's a gospel mandate. It's part of what we are given to do by God on this earth. So if you put some of your budgets to actually environmental work, that is funding right there, especially for people of faith. But what about, how can we plug in, say, large scale? I don't know of any company, bank, industry that does not have a corporate social responsibility concern that is not. There are very few that do not have an environmental, objective. Very many. And sometimes I know people say that we don't know this information, but if, for example, Total has the Eco Challenge, and they actually work directly with people who are doing forest work. So many of these CSRs can support this kind of work for groups, youth and all that. Yeah.
Okay. When we look at some of the statistics, and I would like to read this, the UN statistics indicate that to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius means that emissions will need to peak as soon as possible, followed by rapid reductions. Global carbon emissions need to fall by a staggering 45% by 2030 from 2010 levels, and continue to at a steep decline to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. When we look at our country, are we on the right track to attaining this?
Actually, our country is not the worst offender.
Okay.
Let me just put it out there. The worst offenders are not in Africa.
Okay. That's good. At least that's good to know.
Because we're not at that level of industrialization yet. The worst offenders are in the West.
Okay.
And that's the reason why they carbon trade as it is, as it were.
Okay.
What happens is that the worst offenders are the ones, not the ones who have the highest effects. We are the ones who put in the least in terms of, you know, the greenhouse gases.
Yes.
But we're the ones who suffer the most.
The most from the repercussions.
And I told you why.
Yes.
The vulnerabilities and all that.
Yes.
So for us to achieve that, really, the concerted effort is global. But the people with the biggest chunk of work is the industrialized nations. And that's the reason why we talk about they need to actually cut down.
Okay.
We are the ones who need to do a lot of the adaptation work because we're the ones who suffer the most. Adaptation and mitigation and all that. We can say we're already fighting a monster that is bigger than us. You do your part. Wangare's mother used to say, this is my little thing. Hers was planting trees.
Okay.
If all of us did something, you know, to bring down those emissions and to bring down all those whatevers, concerted effort, as I said, we might move.
Yes.
But the truth of it actually looks hopeless. Yeah? There are times when I read those things and I'm like, are we going to, maybe not in our generation, but if we continue at the pace and if nothing changes, we are going to destroy this environment, this planet as we know it. And unfortunately, that is what the legacy we're going to be leaving for the next and the coming generation. So as I say, don't now sit back and say, Africa, we're not the biggest offenders. Let's sit back and enjoy. No.
Yeah.
We have work to do.
We have work to do.
We have work to do. Because we have got to make sure that this part of the world is livable for the next coming generations. Do your bit. Let them do their bit. They signed up Kyoto Protocol. Yeah. Let them do and keep your government accountable. What you signed up against, where are we? For example, we have right now in Kenya, we have this goal of planting 2 billion trees by 2022. How many have you grown? You personally
will not
towards that tally. Yeah. So do your little thing. And then I liked Professor Wangari Maathai, the late. Approach to this whole, I know she was an activist, she was into the environment. She said, do your little thing. My little thing is planting trees. Yeah? So what is your little thing? Yeah. And we are doing this to the glory of God, not for any man to praise us. Yeah.
Okay. So what are some of the challenges that you encounter while taking care of this environment?
The challenges are many. Of course, most of them is that people do not actually, a lot of people would prefer to invest in other things that they can see the results.
Okay.
Because people ask me, hey, those forests you people are planting, how are they benefiting you? I said they don't benefit me. They're benefiting my great-grandchildren. Yeah? And you don't always have to do things to benefit yourself.
Yes.
Live for others also. Do things for the benefit of others.
So actually you're taking us to the self-actualization point of the Maslow's
hierarchy
of
I
needs.
Think you can, I think because, it's safe. Yeah. It's safe to say that. Yeah, you move on to just thinking about your stomach, your bank account, to actually helping, doing what? As I said, it's a gospel mandate. When you're proclaiming the gospel, you also do it when you plant trees. That's what I said. So you also do it for others. But also, challenges are many. People don't put money in it.
Okay.
Look at budget. Just go to any budget for even those CSR. The environmental component is usually just a drop.
In the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the people who make money from the confusion and the degradation.
Okay.
And when you start to become, conscious, they don't want that. Recently, we saw in the news that one of the activists was killed. She was actually assassinated for her work in protecting the Kiambu forest. Yeah. So there's that threat is there. There are people who don't want the forest to be protected.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. There are people who want to protect their industries because they want to put effluent in the rivers without, following the due process.
Okay.
The minute you start making noise about it, they will come for you. Yeah. It's unfortunate. But you can actually die. That's what I'm saying. But no one is going to kill you if you go and plant trees.
Yeah.
No one will kill you. So the challenges are there. It's not well financed. Even when you look at the kind of goals that have been set, even at the SDG level, you will find we're always lagging behind. So it's financing. It's enthusiasm. People just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You are literally whipping people to do it. but also the real danger of people who benefit from the confusion and all these. Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right, so there you have it. Yeah, there's nothing actually under the sun that doesn't have challenges. Yeah. But you know, one of the things that gives us hope is that God says he won't give us something that is greater than what we can handle. So you planting trees, you know, at your own individual personal level is something that you can handle.
I think so. You don't even have to go to a public place. Just plant them in your compound.
At your home.
Yeah.
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 And just give your contribution.
Do your little thing.
Well, we need to start wrapping up, and I don't know what what you want to tell us as we start to wind up this conversation.
Well, as I said, we end and start with God's word.
Yeah.
If you are a Christian, you say you're born again, and you do not have a concern for the environment, there's something wrong with the way you are discipled. And I'm not saying it's wrong, it's bad. I'm just saying we need to add.
There's a gap.
There's a gap that needs to be met.
Okay, okay.
And I think if you start telling children from a very young age that all these things that were created by God, they were given to us as gifts, but they're not just given to us, they were given to every generation that is coming,
and
it is part of our responsibility to care for it.
Yeah.
I think that we shall start to have, you know, something like don't litter.
Yeah, I was hoping you would come to that. Yeah.
Don't litter. That is something that is, it's the biggest menace we have in this country.
Yes.
Is litter. People just don't care. And you and I went to a school, we had the privilege of going to a school where some of these things were inculcated in us without even being told.
Yes.
Remember?
Yes.
So it's possible to come up with it, to bring a generation up of people who are environmental conscious.
Yes.
But parents have to be like that. Children copy what they see.
Yes.
Parents have to be like that. In churches, it has to be emphasized. And I think we'll start to create, you know, little pockets of environmental enthusiasts.
Yes.
People who know when I take care of the creation, I'm worshipping.
That's good. It's part of worship.
It is part of worship. Yes. I am worshipping and I am actually telling God, thank you. And I'm actually working with him. I'm a co-worker.
And I am a good steward of what I have been given.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say.
Wow. And I start, when you talk about just littering, I remember there was a time when there was this law that had been passed that there has to be a trash can. I don't know if it still exists in the public transport. Yes and no.
We can do the research.
But those are some of the mitigating, you know, strategies that had been put out there so that we stop littering. That is such a low-hanging fruit.
Such a low-hanging. In fact, it's one of the lowest.
Yes.
Another one is just plastic bags were banned in this country. But you and I know, if we walk out of this building, we shall find them. We shall find hawkers using them. That goes to show that, yes, we can enact policies and even practices, but if there's no follow-through.
Follow-through, yeah.
If there's no enforcement of the law, we are going to be eroding all the good.
And we'll be going back to
we are going back where people actually admire. We had some visitors from South Africa. They're like, you guys actually, our plastic was, you know, confiscated at the airport. We were like, yeah, welcome to Kenya.
Great, yeah.
But no, it's a shame. It's a shame. Yeah.
All right. I guess that's your parting shot, that you do the little that you can do. Yeah. Okay, great. So I hope that this has been a blessing to you. It has been such a great morning just hosting June, an environmental enthusiast, and I hope that you can pick some of the passion that she has brought onto this show and start to do your little part. It's been great to have you on this channel. Please do take a minute and share even as we exit. This has been Elevate TV Kenya and Elevate on Facebook and YouTube. God bless you and see you next week.